Hi, everyone. This is Dane Dormio. Welcome to the Chai Tea Tai Chi web show. I am joined here this evening by my good buddy, Andrew Brown. And also, we have a very special guest, Mr. Joshua Graner, who has a long and colorful career in the military and public health and acupuncture. And we're looking forward to hearing all about his work with helping veterans overcome chronic injury and pain and supporting public health through integrative and functional pain relief and rehabilitation. So welcome, Josh. Thanks for being here.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Great.
Thanks for having me on.
I definitely want to start with hearing about your origin story, because you have a pretty unique background for someone who's in traditional Chinese medicine. So how did you get into this whole field of traditional Chinese medicine in general and pain relief specifically? How did that start for you?
I would say that it started when I was a kid. It was a bit of a misfit growing up in Southern California, part of the Southern California punk scene, and getting in trouble, doing things I shouldn't be doing. And at a certain point, the state of California asked me to exit, and my parents found a really cool place for me to hang out in the Ozarks, in the woods, and lived on a farm with 20 other guys, and we grew a lot of our own food. And one of the guys that had worked there that ran the school, he was a former Army medic, and he was the one who was in charge of all of our, taking care of us. So that was kind of like an inspiration.
Are you actually one of those kids that got sent to military school?
It wasn't a military school. No, it was a farm school. So out in the woods, 300 acres, 100 miles from the nearest town.
Were you in Missouri or Arkansas? Ozarks.
Missouri. Yeah, Missouri.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. My parents always threatened doing that to me, but they never did.
Oh yeah, my parents, they always put their money where their mouth was. So, yeah, but that was where I was exposed to both natural medicine, because we were surrounded by Mennonites and Quakers, and a lot of those people in the backwoods, they had all different types of remedies, herbal or otherwise, to take care of things. And then of course, then there was the medic that was there, he was just a point of inspiration for me. So that way, when I had graduated high school and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, or just before graduation, it seemed like an easy fit for me just to go into the military. So I entered in. I walked into the recruiter, and at the time I had a purple mohawk, nice. Blonde on the side, had a Dead Kennedys t-shirt that said "Bedtime for Democracy," and I walked in and said, "Hey, I want to be an airborne medic." And the guy looked at me. He was like, "You must be out of your mind." I was like, "No, that's exactly what I want to do." So I did all the testing and stuff, and then in fact they wanted to put me in military intelligence. They wanted me to be a spy. I was pretty dead set that I wanted to be a paratrooper medic. So that's what I did. I went through the training, and a lot of people struggled with it. I loved it, every minute of it. Basic training, airborne training, AIT, where we learned all of our medical skills, Pathfinder training, air assaults, like all that stuff. I loved it. Just absolutely thrived. Because another part of my story that I didn't say is that the thing that kept me from really getting in big trouble as a kid was martial arts. So I started studying Kempo karate when I was probably 11, 12 years old. And that became a really big grounding force for me. So the discipline, the physical movements, the philosophy, the meditation, deferring and acquiescing to somebody that had higher degrees of skill, all that came very natural. So the military was actually it was easy for me. I never really struggled in that much. And in fact, just to make sure that I didn't lose my way too much, I didn't get too brainwashed, I tattooed some things on my body just to make sure that I stayed connected to my roots. So,
cool,
yeah.
Well, it's good that you did the martial arts training, because in old times, the martial arts training when you were a kid, that was the whole point, because you become a warrior when you're 16. Like, oh, you're old enough to go to fight. Good. You've already been trained for 5 years.
Yeah. So the warrior mentality, it made a lot of sense to me already.
I can definitely relate to that from from growing up in the rural backwoods of Arkansas, and I got involved with martial arts really young, age 10, got into Taekwondo, and I was also way into ROTC, and I thought when I grew up I wanted to be like a special forces commando, so that I could have a legal excuse to blow things up and kill people. I was not that well adjusted as a teenager either, and I, when I went to one summer in ROTC, we went to this summer camp that was actually at Fort Leonard Wood, and it was just a week long, but it was kind of like a designed to model a basic training experience, and getting yelled at and getting your ass kicked all over the place, and everybody else hated it, but I loved it.
Yeah. That's where I did my my basic training too. Was at we called it Fort Lost in the Woods.
Yeah.
Yeah, Missouri.
And so you you went to high school at this school, and then did you go into the military right after high school? Yeah,
pretty much. It was the academic aspect was self-paced. They taught a lot of skills. It was very much skill oriented. So building, some basic blacksmithing, machinery, farming, but then all the academic stuff, it was all self-paced. So the majority of the kids that went there were going for a GED, but because it was self-paced, I actually finished school in 2 years, because I did basically I was there for about 2 years, and I finished all my high school in those 2 years. So when I finished up with that program, I needed to go to another high school just to go through the graduation process and go through, jump through a couple of hoops. So it was during that time, and that was actually in Minneapolis, and that's when I joined the military, was when I was there. And then once I got off of active duty, I decided to move to Nevada, where my dad was, just to enjoy some time with him and repair my relationship with him. And enrolled in University of Nevada, Reno, and got really interested in biochemistry and nutrition, and I did that for about 5 years, doing research. So I was studying natural killer cells and the effect of different levels of vitamin E and other type of nutrients, and activating these natural killer cells, these subsets of the immune system, and doing surveillance and basically seek and destroy missions for leukemia. So we've got these really cool cells in our immune system called natural killer cells, which are basically like the special forces of our immunity, and they seek and destroy whatever it is that our body needs to get rid of. And I was really interested in leukemia at the time, so yeah, going down kind of that road of biochemistry, I thought for sure I was going to go into conventional medicine. In fact, I had a scholarship. I took my MCATs and did all that stuff. I had a scholarship to go into conventional medicine, and then I just had my own kind of health crisis that happened right around that same time that made me start to second guess it.
What kind of health crisis was that? What was the nature of it?
I got mononucleosis. So I got Epstein-Barr virus. And then I started developing really severe migraine headaches. And I was taking 20 credits at school. I was doing research. I was also working a part-time job. Pushing my body pretty hard. I was training. I was doing a lot of northern style, long fist, Shaolin, Gong Fu, and Jiu-Jitsu. So I was training really hard, and then my body just broke down. So the combination of the stress, just pushing myself, not having that balance, just thinking that I could just push myself and just keep on pushing myself, and I would just be able to keep on going as long as I want, as hard as I want. And then also, I think I was having a bit of an existential crisis, because one of my jobs, so when I got off of active duty, I joined the National Guard in Nevada, and that was right around 9/11. And I got orders to go to, at the time, that was Afghanistan. And then before I was supposed to ship out, they stopped and they had me stay stateside so I could teach combat medicine to our soldiers that we were deploying out. And, fast forward a couple of years later, our soldiers are coming back. A lot of the soldiers that I trained, and they're altered and they're not doing well. physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And, you know, I was really, this might sound really too strong, but I was actually really appalled at the treatment that they got. And, you know, the pain that they had, the trauma. I mean, even at that time, and this was back in the early 2000s, they weren't even really talking about post-traumatic stress disorder. They weren't talking about traumatic brain injury. You know, these are keywords that we've been hearing now for the last decade. But back in 2001, 2002, there wasn't a lot of talk about it. And so I've seen a lot of troops coming back, you know, really having a hard time. And it made me second guess why it was that I wanted to go into medicine in the first place. And so the combination of that, and then also dealing with my own health crisis, I started receiving acupuncture, started getting shiatsu. My Sifu noticed what was happening. He had me move away a little way from the hard style martial arts, started teaching me Yang style Tai Chi and then Chen style Tai Chi. So the combination of getting the acupuncture, the Tai Chi, slowing down, cutting, you know, I took a semester off. I found balance. Like for the first time, I think in my entire life, I actually felt balance. And that was a huge pivot point for me. And because I could feel that physically, mentally, and emotionally, I was going down a hole that I wasn't going to be able to get myself out of. You know, severe migraine headaches, fibromyalgia type pain. It's pretty intense.
Okay.
So I'm gonna back up here to make sure I've got the complete picture. You were on active duty for 10 years?
No, I was active duty for 4 years, and then I did National Guard for 6.
Okay.
Yeah, so active duty in the 82nd Airborne Division, and then 6 years at the 421st Regional Training Institute in Nevada.
And when you originally went in as a teenager, still basically, you knew you wanted to be an airborne medic. That sounds really specific. How did you get like that dialed in and, you know, that precise?
Getting high and watching MTV. Right? Like, they knew what they were doing with those advertisements. Like seeing these guys jumping out of planes and rappelling out of shit and like, you know, jumping on top of the person with their aid bag. I was like, fuck, I want to do that. Whatever that is, and that the cool clothes that they're wearing, and it's like a machine gun, like that looks pretty badass.
So you get to hunt people and heal people at the same time, kind of.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, my kit consisted of my aid. So when I jumped, I'd have my aid bag. I'd have 72 hours worth of food and ammo. I'd have grenades. I had a M16 with an M203 grenade launcher on it, because I would go out and do and support forward support missions with the Army Rangers. Yeah, so I mean, my kit was like, I loved my kit. My kit was badass.
yeah. So it sounds like a lot of fun.
Have any weapons? Did you manage to keep anything or buy it again? Once you got out?
What's interesting is when I graduated from Airborne school, my dad got me a 1911 Colt, basically a Colt 45 1911, which was sweet. I mean, I loved it. The thing is I wouldn't have been able to bring that into combat because the ammunition that they provided was 9mm and not 45. So yeah, so no, at that time I mean, they don't let you keep any weapons. I did keep a couple like outdated field surgical kits, which I still have to this day.
So with it, I mean, yeah, it totally, I can totally see how that would be, you know, super fun and cool, especially at that age. But something that that we had discussed when we talked previously was the video of Arthur's transformation, which I highly recommend anybody to watch this. If you know, look it up on YouTube, Arthur's transformation, and it brings tears to my eyes every time I see it because it's this guy who documented his own story. He was a veteran, a paratrooper, and he was in really bad shape, severely overweight. The doctors told him he'd never walk again, that sort of thing. And he rehabilitated himself with yoga, and he video documented the process. He followed a home study course from Diamond Daryl Page, and eventually he was able to not only walk without crutches, but he could run. He could do a handstand. He could, you know, do all this incredible stuff. But the reason he said that he was in that situation to begin with was because the Army wants you to hit the ground just slowly enough so that you don't splatter, basically. And even if you do the landing perfectly, you always injure yourself a little bit each time you jump. And so, you know, it's obviously, as in terms of a long-term career choice, there's severe limitations. So I'm wondering how much of your own challenges with chronic injury and pain were you able to attribute to that? Like, did just doing the training and the work involved with your job take a toll on your body?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, so I've got a service-connected disability. You know, something I didn't mention before, which was a big contributor and still is to this day for headaches. So I had a parachute accident where, so you know, I had over 60 jumps. I had 66 jumps when I'd gotten out. So when you jump, it's not like you're skydiving, right? Where most tactical jumps are at night. We're usually doing it from about 800 to 1,200 feet off the ground, so it's pretty low, right? Most people when they're skydiving are at about 14 to 16,000 feet. Halo is above that; it's about 20 to 22,000 feet if they've got supplemental oxygen. But with this type of tactical, it's really, really low elevation, rapid insert to get as many people on the ground as possible. So we've got what's called a static line that comes out of your parachute, and that connects to a cable that goes from the fore and aft of the aircraft, from the nose and the tail of the aircraft. So you're facing the tail of the aircraft, and you've got the jump master in front of you. So this was a big jump that we were on. There was multiple forces involved. So there were the Navy, Marines, Army Special Forces. It was a pretty big training mission that we were on in Camp Lejeune. And so normally, if there's really high winds, a lot of turbulence, what they'll do a lot of times, they'll scratch they'll basically cancel the jump. We'll land on the airfield and we'll pretend like we jumped in. Just because it's dangerous. You know, I've seen people burn in where their parachute's in and open. You know, I've been on the drop zone and seen that happen. So it's, you know, those training accidents do happen. But in my case, situation happened that we were in a lot of turbulence. I was at the door position, and as soon as the green light turned on, it was time for it to go. I handed the jump master my static line, and I've got over, you know, probably 110 pounds in my kit. And at that point, the aircraft banked the opposite direction of the door. So when that happened, the jump master grabbed me to try to stabilize me because I was going to fall over. But what happened was I was falling towards the door. I spun. Instead of going straight out the door and then getting sucked out like a vacuum, I rolled out of the door and I rolled into a pocket of dead space.
Wow. So
basically what happened is, so instead of gravity pulling me down, or instead of wind resistance pulling me out, I just basically went into a burble, into basically the twilight zone, which is right along the fuselage of the aircraft. So basically I'm spinning around like a top by my static line. There's not enough force to break me free. And then I'm hitting the side of the airplane continuously, blacked out a couple times. And then finally, when it cut free, I was doing a forward somersault, and my parachute, instead of coming out behind me like this, it came up between my legs and pushed my entire kit, machine gun, everything right up into my face, including my boots. My boots are up here, right, doing a basically yoga posture. And, you know, I'm less than 800 feet off the ground. And, you know, at that point, the risers, which should be at this type of angle, that's the cords that connect the pack tray to the canopy, they were pushed in because my legs were pulled in. So my parachute, instead of being like this, was like this.
Collapsed.
I looked up and I saw this parachute that was not deployed, and time slowed down, and somehow I kind of finagled my kit and everything, got myself untangled from the risers, and then I heard, and just as that happened, then I hit the ground. And I actually woke up, and there was a guy from the 7th Group Special Forces sitting on my chest, essentially reviving me and saying, hey, kid, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I think I'm all right. So, you know, just like a quick little PMCS, check myself down, make sure I was okay. So basically what happened was I hit the ground, blacked out. The wind was blowing really hard. My canopy stayed deployed, and then it was dragging me across the drop zone. And he had to basically, you know, go from his defensive position, jump on top of me, release one of my risers so the thing would deflate. And you know, it was kind of a comical moment because he said, "Hey man, do you need the medic?" And just at the moment, I was like, "Well, I'm one of the medics." Kind of screwed, but yeah, I mean that's I got a traumatic brain injury from that situation, and that's you know, that's still, you know, to some extent affects me to this day. But you know, during that time in college, it was just like it was a perfect storm of, you know, that latent TBI, the damage, the fractures that I had to my vertebrae, Epstein-Barr, like a whole situation. It all came together and just created, you know, a perfect storm of dysfunction and imbalance. And I had to basically just, you know, take 6 months off of life and figure it out. And I would definitely say that martial arts, my Sifu, his instruction, the shiatsu, the acupuncture that I got, the meditation, the Tai Chi that I was studying, that was amazing. I mean, that's what got me back on balance. And that's when I had to make the decision between taking a full ride military scholarship to go to medical school or to go to Pacific College there in San Diego and study traditional Chinese medicine. It felt better to choose the other route and study natural medicine. And yeah, so that's kind of my past. That's how I got into it. That's how I got involved.
Yeah, it's an amazing story of self-healing, and really, I mean, that's one of the best kind of credentials that you can have is to have overcome your own challenges and your own healing journey like that. And so you overcame your own health challenges using these principles from traditional Chinese medicine and qigong, and so that was what motivated you to want to study that and then go into public health. How did you transition from there into your public health career?
Well, you know, at that time I started studying when I was in undergraduate. I started studying Buddhism. I had an opportunity to work at a monastery and cultivate one of their libraries, and so I spent a lot of time with it was Tibetan Buddhism, and learned a lot about compassion and learned a lot about loving kindness. And from that moment, so just the idea of serving other people, it felt good. You know, I knew that I was kind of built for service already. You know, part of being in the military was just all the cool shit and the equipment and all the fun stuff, but all of it is, you know, I bought 100% into the idea that I was there to serve. And so service came pretty easily. And when I realized that I could serve a different way, and I could use my intellect to help people out, and I could introduce people to ideas and help to educate them in the same way that I was being educated by these Buddhist monks, and I was being educated by my Sifu, I was being educated by these other healthcare providers and natural healers that were helping me out. I thought, well, you know, I would really like to be able to extend this to the majority of people who wouldn't normally have access to it. And so when I graduated from graduate school with my degree in acupuncture and Chinese medicine, my primary focus was working with military veterans. So I opened up a nonprofit called the Courageous Heart Foundation, and we would set up these free clinics that would have 3 teams. Each team had an acupuncturist, a chiropractor, an osteopath, a Reiki practitioner, and a behavioral health specialist. And we would get, there's a really large military veteran population here, especially Vietnam vet population here in Southern Oregon. And one of the universities dedicated the space and the admin support. And I had a couple interns from the university, and we ran this clinic for 4 years, where every month these guys would come and have an opportunity to have an experience that they've never had before. So it was pretty cool. They go through all the different stations. They'd get acupuncture, and they'd go and get chiropractor, then they would get a massage, and then they'd sit with a Reiki practitioner, and then maybe if they needed to, they'd go sit with a behavioral health specialist who was there just in case they had psychosomatic expression of whatever was happening within their body. So that was kind of like the lead into public health.
Yeah.
You mentioned education as being a big part of what you do, as in you wanted to just not just help people get better, but help them help educate them to lead more healthy lifestyles and take better care of themselves. What is the role of education in public health, or what do you think that like more people should know and practice when it comes to preserving and maintaining their health?
Yeah, so it's a big question. So I would say that, you know, my job as a doctor of Chinese medicine is to make myself essentially obsolete in the lives of my patients gradually over time, to educate them and empower them in such a way that they understand how their body works. They can anticipate when they're engaging in behaviors that are going to result in dysfunction, and they have the tools at hand to help them get through those times of dysfunction, whether it's contracting a virus, a bacteria, a yeast, a mold, a fungus, exposure to different types of environmental toxins, or whether they're behaviorally oriented as far as the foods that they eat or the movements that they're doing or not doing, or how they're using their mind, how they're using their sexuality, how they're relating to other people. So, when it comes to, I don't think that there's any real one thing that a person can do other than have the desire to seek balance. And I think that once the desire for balance is there and the willingness to work towards balance, then that creates a foundation of health that can then springboard them into higher levels and higher degrees of being, of feeling better, thinking better. So, I would say that my core philosophy has everything to do with this idea of qi, but it's not qi in the way that a lot of people think about it, as far as like this esoteric energy, or this thing that is moving, this thing that can't be seen, but it can be felt. Qi, as I understand it from the teachers that I've spent time with, really means potential. So if I am engaging in a practice of qigong, gong means the mastery of the cultivation of, and qi, if that's potential, then as I'm engaging in my qigong practice, what I'm doing is I am increasing the capacity for whatever it is that I want to focus on. So say, for example, I want to increase my emotional capacity. I want to have a higher degree of emotional resilience, the higher degree of compassion, the ability to love, both self-love and love others. As I do things, loving kindness meditation, as I do things, forgiveness, as I do things like understanding my own humanity, what I'm doing is I'm engaging in a system of qigong that helps to increase my potential, right? I'm cultivating and mastering my potential for emotion. So the same thing physically, right? If I want to learn how to move my body in space to do all the things that I want to do, it's a matter of being able to move gracefully within the laws of physics. So understanding experientially by doing things like handstands, by doing things like velocity sports, right? All of those things I consider to be a type of qigong practice, as long as my intention is that I really want to expand my potential, right? And I think that falls in alignment with what Bruce Lee would talk about a lot, is the ultimate ideal within the practice of martial arts is to increase the ability for us to express ourselves. And that's what I think of as qi, is the ability to express ourselves, the ability to increase our potential. So if I enter into a relationship in that way, when I'm meeting with somebody, I try to figure out, just like a good doctor of Chinese medicine does, where is the excess and where is the deficiency? Where is the stagnation? Where is the strength? Where is the weakness? And how can I help the person to find balance? First, utilizing the tools that they already have available to them. And it's just a matter of kind of implanting the the right mental framework, so that way they can take a look and see what it is that they have available to them already and start to apply those things to their lives. Instead of saying, well, you know what, I'm going to try to adhere you to a philosophy that's not in alignment with your culture, you know, it's not culturally appropriate, and try to get you to do something that is going to be really difficult because it's too foreign. So instead, you know, figure out where's the person at? What do they believe already? Are they a Christian? You know, I can speak Christian, no problem, right? I can speak atheist. I can speak, you know, finance, whatever it is, and then using the things that the person already knows, and using that to create the metaphors and the analogies necessary to give them the tools and the framework to find the balance on their own. And then once that framework already exists, filling in the blanks with the exercise, with the nutrition, with the use of herbal medicine, all those things then become pretty easy because that framework exists already.
All right. Wow. Well, oh, man, this is a great story so far. So I was on your website and I saw that you have these 7 points of like a full, gosh, you used a certain word, but it's basically the 7 points of health, of like having a health and wellness lifestyle.
Yeah, sure.
The first one you mentioned is nutrition.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you could give us a quick, like few rules on what's the best things to eat.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, there's two things to consider. One is everybody has a constitution, meaning that everybody has a genetic or epigenetic predisposition towards thriving in different types of environments, whether that's ecological, meaning that's related to the food that is grown within the ecology that our body was designed through years and years and years and generations to thrive in. So the first part is constitution. So figuring out what a person's constitution is. For example, some people thrive with dairy. You give them dairy, the fats, the proteins, the phospholipids, the nutrients that are in there, they will help their body to thrive. You give that same food to somebody else and it's going to make them sick. In fact, that might be the root cause of their dysfunction, is the fact that they're eating too much of a substance that would be extremely beneficial for somebody else. So it's really difficult to say, you know, everybody should be eating like this. So that's the first one. The second one is everybody should be eating a balanced whole foods diet.
Good. Right.
So on one hand, right, there's the constitution, which is everybody's different, but then there are some general rules. So the best dietary. I've got a degree in nutrition. I've got advanced certificates in functional medicine from the Institute of Functional Medicine. So, but the best advice I've ever heard about nutrition is eat good food, mostly vegetables, and not too much. Right? I mean,
that's from Michael Pollan, isn't it?
I think that's right. Yeah.
It's eat food, which is defined a specific way. Eat real food.
Yeah.
Not too much, mostly plants. That's from his book In Defense of Food, which I read that years ago, and that was one of my big takeaways from it. I love his whole philosophy about that, and yeah, like eat whole natural food. You know, if it comes, there are some rules like if it's something your grandmother wouldn't recognize as food, or if the ingredients list has words you can't pronounce, these kind of fall out of the definition of real food.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it's balance, moderation, and like you said, for most people, it's going to be mostly plants, but of course that depends on your specific constitution. Which, speaking of that, I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that different diets are suitable for different people, and I think this is so huge because it's the element of paying attention to your own body. And there are people it's a thing people argue and debate about all the time, and they get really nasty about it. And some people are like on the carnivore diet. I health was suffering. Jordan Peterson said his health was suffering until he started eating nothing but salted beef, and then he was fine, you know. And some people are like, oh, I was eating meat and then I stopped and everything turned around for me. So, you know, it's not like a thing that we have to get at each other's throats about. It's different things for different people, but these principles of, you know, there are certain things that are bad for everybody, and the balance and moderation is kind of universal. Totally.
Yeah. And, you know, and the thing that, you know, from at this point, I've been doing this for 25 years, and, you know, I would say that a lot of times when people change their diet, what they're experiencing a lot of time is the benefit of exclusion, right? So, you know, if somebody goes towards eating a ketogenic diet, or, you know, a carnivore diet, it might not necessarily be the meat that is making them healthy. It might be them getting rid of all the other garbage that they were eating previously. So they benefit through exclusion. They're taking out the garbage, right? So a lot of times, you know, and then people will ask me, like, what's the best movement practice for me, right? And I say, whatever one makes you feel the most joyful, just do something, right? And a lot of times, just having the intention that I'm going to move in a joyful and healthy way is going to make it good, right? Whether it's belly dancing or karate or like whatever it is. So it's the same thing. People are like, you know, where do I start with a diet? Where do I start with my nutrition? Start with the intention of wanting to be healthy. Don't start with the intention of like, I need to gain a bunch of muscle mass, or I need to lose a bunch of weight. Start with the intention like, I want to be healthy. I'm going to pay attention to how I feel when I eat certain foods. So I think that, you know, that's a nice way for a person to realize, you know, what is their constitution. But, you know, then there's also systems through functional medicine where you can do tests, you can do questionnaires, you can do surveys, you can do genetic tests. You can look at different IgE and IgG biomarkers and see what a person has an allergy or sensitivity to. And, you know, those things exist as well. Those are kind of like, you know, if the person has the money and the time to do it, those are, you know, some shortcuts, some hacks to figure out what would be good for you. But, you know, when it comes down to it, like I did a full year of ketogenic diet, just because, you know, it was all the rate. I mean, I started learning about it about 6 or 7 years ago. It seemed like it had a lot of promise, and I gave it a shot, and it was okay. I mean, I didn't thrive on it, but I gave it a shot. Like I really did it really strictly. And then, so now what I eat is what I call like a modified ancestral diet, or like what some people call like a modified Paleolithic diet, which is basically what we had just said before, which is, you know, eat food, eat good food, not too much, and mostly vegetables. So, you know, most of the stuff that I eat is grown. And as a result, I feel amazing. Like I don't take nearly as many supplements as I used to. I used to have an entire shelf of supplements, and all day long, I'm just like 3 times a day, I'm taking all the supplements that I know that I should be taking. I learned about it from my training.
That was my next question about as a nutritionist professional, what's your opinion on like these concentrated and synthetic vitamins that people are using to supplement instead of eating good food, they just start taking vitamins instead?
I think they're great bridges. I think they're really good if a person's got a health challenge, especially if one of the big things that you come into in our society is we interact with a lot of people who have gut dysbiosis. So the natural flora and fauna of the gut is not healthy enough to extract the nutrients that the body requires in the most bioavailable forms. So I think in that case, it's good for somebody to be taking some supplements, as long as they're taking the supplements not with the intention of, you know, I'm gonna take a bunch of folate and B12 so that way I can drink more beer. It's done with the intention that I'm taking the supplements as a bridge. You know, it's in the same way. I mean, we haven't really got a chance to talk about what I do in pain medicine, but I work with physicians who are helping patients getting off of their pain medication. And as a consultant to the physician and to the patient, one of the things that I say is, hey, that opioid medication that you're taking is not bad, but it's a bridge. And if you as the physician, if you as the patient are using this as a bridge, as you're exploring other means to reduce your pain, then that medication is actually serving its purpose. But if the intention is to take that medication and to be maintained on it, with the exception of a few different types of diseases and cases, the vast majority of people who are taking narcotic opioid medication for chronic persistent musculoskeletal non-cancer pain, it's not effective. In fact, it makes their pain worse. So in the same way, you know, if we were to translate that into supplements, I think supplements can actually become unhealthy. You know, I had mentioned before that one of the things that I've been doing as an undergraduate, I was doing undergraduate research, working with their laboratory. We were looking at ideal types and ideal concentrations of vitamin E to stimulate this natural killer cell effect in doing tumor surveillance for leukemia. And one of the things that we found is that in order to have the effect on the natural killer cells that we were seeing in vitro, meaning in a test tube or in a petri dish, the amounts of vitamin E we had to give somebody would be so oxidative for the system that it would make them sick. So a lot of people think of vitamin E as an antioxidant, which it can be, but in higher concentrations or different analogs, that vitamin, that supplement can actually be oxidative. It becomes a pro-oxidant. So the same thing, if somebody's taking, you know, excessive amounts of certain types of vitamins and minerals, that could, like, say, for example, we're going through this whole COVID SARS situation, right? There's a lot of information about taking zinc, right? And if you indiscriminately take zinc chelate for an extended period of time, you're going to inhibit, or you're going to interfere with the metabolism and the utilization of copper. And if you drain the copper out of your body, then you'll start suffering depression. You'll start suffering insomnia. And in fact, some people, copper deficiency is linked to, or copper deficiency and also copper excess is linked to schizophrenia. So by depleting, by taking too much of a vitamin or mineral, you can deplete the other ones, right? So again, what it comes down to is balance. Yeah. Right? If we find that balance, and if we get the majority of our food or the majority of our nutrients from whole food, then we don't have to take supplements as much. And if we really work, like, so, you know, as you're all going through my website and you saw, like, you know, 7 foundations of health, and the first one is nourish or nutrition. The primary focus of that is not eating specific foods. The primary focus of that is getting your gut back in shape. Then if your gut's back in shape, then you can derive so many more nutrients from the food that you eat. And you don't have to be as careful with your diet. You don't have as many sensitivities to different types of foods. You know, it's the goal of nutrition isn't to get somebody on such a strict diet that they can't travel, that they have to constantly, you know, they're spending hours, you know, every week, you know, food prepping. The goal of nutrition is to increase a person's personal resilience, physical resilience, right? Going back to the concept of chi, the idea of nutrition is to increase their physical potential. The potential for them to drink a 6-pack of beer on a weekend and they're going to be okay, right? They might have a bit of a hangover, but they're going to be okay. They're not going to be wrecked for a week.
Yeah, there's kind of an idea that I've heard going around. It's kind of woo-woo on the surface, but there's an element of truth to it, at least, which is that you know, if your system is tuned up, your body can make use of just about anything. You know, you can whatever you give it, your body, if it's working properly, it's able to take what it needs and discard what it doesn't need. And obviously there are limits to that, but to a certain extent, it's exactly what you're saying, that the healthier you are, the less sensitive, the more resilient, the more your body can make use of whatever you do give it. And I've certainly felt that, you know, when if I am in a state where I just have high energy and I'm exercising a lot, doing a lot of qigong, and I'm overall very fit and vital and healthy, then it almost feels like it doesn't matter what I eat. At least a little bit. If I were to, you know, eat a poor diet consistently, I would definitely feel it. But, you know, one day or something, you can skip eating for a day. You can eat junk food for a day, and as long as you're, you know, if your body is resilient to begin with, then it won't be nearly as detrimental as if, you know, like knocking you flat for a whole day while you have to recover. I've certainly felt and experienced that myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I you know, I've got patients that, you know, they're on a strict diet for a certain period of time, and they eat gluten once, you know, and they you know, they have a reaction, and, you know, they either break out in hives or they get diarrhea. Or so, you know, the other aspect that I think is really important when it comes down to balance, and that's one of the reasons that, you know, on my website that I've got 7 different foundations of health, you know, is because we have to also look at the emotional aspect. You know, while a lot of our dysfunction has to do with the food that we eat, our exposure to environmental toxins, the challenge is in our immune system of being able to separate self from non-self, you know, and having an unintelligent immune system. I mean, all those things are legit. They're real. They're affecting a lot of people on a regular basis. But I also think that, you know, one of the most important things is what's happening in our minds, what's happening with our emotional resilience. And I would even go so far as to say that if somebody was to say, Joshua, I only have enough time to work on one thing, what would that be? I would start with emotional resilience first. Yeah. You know, because I listened to this really cool podcast with Keller Williams, you know, the real estate magnate. And, you know, he's got this philosophy, and I like it. You know, it's, you know, what is that one thing that I can focus on, that by focusing on that, everything else gets a little bit better. And I would say that from having been in the health and wellness field for a long time now, so much of what is affecting us, of course, is nutrition, diet, environmental toxicity, all these different things. But it's mental, emotional, and relationship toxicity. And being able to become aware of that, developing emotional resilience, I think is actually really key. Because I've noticed that when I work with people and we set that solid foundation, everything else becomes easier. Every other change that they want to make to their life is not as hard. It's not a struggle. And, you know, I would say that honestly, 70 to 80% of my patient population, the vast majority of their pain, and I'm not talking about their injury or their medical history. I'm talking about the pain that they're feeling, the suffering that they're experiencing with their condition, is psychosomatic. And, you know, when people hear that, they're like, well, what do you mean? Are you trying to tell me that all this is in my head? And that's not it at all, right? So think about it this way. Say you were to say something to me that made me embarrassed, my face would flush, right? I would blush, right? I would have a physiological response to an emotional experience. If I was to see somebody, or when I spend time with a partner and I get aroused, physically aroused, right? I'm having a physiological response to an emotional experience. Pain works along the same exact pathways. When you study the neuroscience of pain, it works along the same exact pathways, right? Because the experience of pain is subjective, and it follows along these pathways that have to do with safety, with reproduction, and with perceived social safety. So I would go so far as to say that if we were to focus on our mental emotional health collectively, all the other things would just kind of fall into place. And that's really become where I've put the majority of my focus lately.
Yeah, because just like there's psychosomatic illness, there's also psychosomatic wellness. It works the other direction too. That right. You know, if you can think yourself sick, you can think yourself healthy. I'd like to talk about the role of qigong in public health. because one thing that's coming up right now is World Tai Chi and Qigong Day.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right.
A big thing that happens at the end of April, the last Saturday of April every year. And
25th this year, by the way.
What?
It's the 25th this year, so
that's right.
That.
This year Saturday, April 25th is World Qigong Day, World Tai Chi and Qigong Day. And due to the lockdown, I'm not sure I should say too much about this just yet, because it's not quite finalized, but it is looking very promising that because of the quarantine and the physical gatherings not happening, that there is going to be something organized in the way of an online event for that. But we'll announce more about that when it gets more finalized. But on the subject of Qigong in public health, and to not be too esoteric about it, I'm just using Qigong in the sense of gentle exercise combined with breath work, combined with meditation. You know, things that everybody knows are good for them. And what I consider a practice of personal daily energetic hygiene. What do you see? Because you were talking about, as an acupuncturist, as an acupuncture doctor, your goal is to replace yourself, meaning to eventually, the patient's behavior and lifestyle change so that it's no longer necessary to have the intervention of a medical person. How do you see Qigong as in breathwork, exercise, and meditation? What role does that have in public health? I mean, do we really all need to start doing Qigong every day? Would that be a good thing?
I think the short answer is yes.
Okay, good. Because if not, I think so too.
Yeah. I mean, I think about it this way. You know, we maintain our cars, we maintain our houses. Why not maintain our joints? Why not maintain our lymphatic system? Why not maintain our vascular system? You know, and it's not just, I mean, because I think a lot of times when people think of getting somebody into Qigong, doing medical Qigong or medical Tai Chi, it's more for the sedentary person, the sick person, and getting them off the couch and getting them moving. And then of course that's a huge benefit, but also for the competitive athlete, also for the person that's pushing their body, you know, the person who's working as a contractor, the person who is working as a laborer out in the farm, right? It's again, if we think about Qigong as the cultivation of potential, if I am a ultra runner, I'm limiting my potential to being able to run long distances, right? I've become so super specialized in a specific way of moving that I've now limited my physical ability to that. So I see Qigong as a way to balance it. So how does it fit into public health? I think that it's appropriate for everybody, whether they are in hospice care and they're on the bed, right? And being able to teach them something as simple as the 4-7-8 breath, helping them to find a sense of peacefulness, so that way they'll let their physiology do what needs to happen as they pass from this life into the next. Or in somebody who's in a wheelchair, right? Or somebody who is paralyzed, right? Or somebody who is, you know, working, they're raising 3 kids, and, you know, they got a busy life and they don't have time for themselves. Qigong could fit into everybody's life. And I think that for me, it's the great equalizer. If I've been spending too much time in front of the computer, I'll do a short 5-minute Qigong set, right? Focused on some deep breathing and some movement, right? If I'm feeling, emotionally overwhelmed, right? And I can actually feel the energy moving to my head, and I'm starting to feel my blood pressure begin to rise because, you know, for a variety of different reasons. If I can separate myself from that situation, and if I can do a gentle moving or even a sitting breathing situation, I immediately feel my physiology change. You know, I had a teacher, and to this point, I still do, His name's Sadhguru Yagi Vasudev. He's a Kriya yoga teacher, and he has a program called Inner Engineering, and I love that phrase. I mean, in fact, I think that's what, like, that was the hook. It was like inner engineering. Sweet, I like engineering. I like engineering my insides, my insights, and my minds and my emotions. But I think for the person who's practiced it and has done it a couple times, they can feel an immediate shift in their physiology. It's like taking a drug. So there's a lot of CBD products and CBG products and hemp products and THC products and all these things that are going out there that we know have a physiological effect on the body, right? But they're expensive. And, at this point, we don't know what the long-term effects are of taking, a hemp concentrate for extended periods of time. We just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But we do know that if you sit for 5 minutes and you breathe, and you get up, you do a forward bend, you do a back bend, just swing your arms a little bit, you're going to feel good. You're going to feel better, right? And it's free and it's available. So, I would say that I teach it to almost all of my patients. There are some people that are just like, absolutely, like, I only want to come in for the acupuncture. I want nothing else, and because I want to meet them where they're at, that's what I do. But I would say the vast majority of my patients, regardless of whether or not they are post-stroke, traumatic brain injury, severe chronic debilitating pain, I teach almost everybody some form of movement and breathing practice.
Yeah, that's really great. And I would add to that also, beyond rehabilitation, you're coming from the context of you're not well and getting too well, but traditional Chinese medicine theory allows for, it's not like in Western medicine where either you're sick or you're diseased or you're broken or you're fine, you're well. It's like you can cultivate higher and higher levels of health. So if you are well and healthy, and you want to reach higher levels of performance, or you mentioned people who are high level athletes or laborers or using their body intensely, but also people who are like CEOs or entrepreneurs, or have a great need for stress reduction and performance enhancement in their career and their lifestyle. This is also foundational in the sense that you can only get so far without it. Is kind of how I look at it. If you're not doing something like this, then that's going to be the weak links. Just like with maintenance, as you mentioned, if you perform regular maintenance on your car according to the directions, it doesn't mean you'll never have to go to a mechanic, but you can just go to your regular scheduled visits. You're much less likely to be stranded on the highway somewhere.
That's right.
So
yeah, I would say that, and you can quote me on this, that Qigong is the ultimate productivity hack. Absolutely. If I'm doing something and I'm having problems, or I'm getting frustrated, or I'm just like, I can't get into that sense of productivity or creativity, and I can't get into that flow state, because that's really what that is. It's an emotional and psychological flow state. Where I'm going to use my body. I'm going to put my body into a flow state, and then my mind's going to follow my body, and then my emotions are going to follow my mind, and then my actions are going to follow my emotions, my body, and my mind.
Yeah, I call it the oldest flow state technology of Qigong, in fact, and sometimes I even find that, like, if I'm experiencing writer's block or something like that, I'll practice. I start to practice until I get some kind of idea, and then I'll stop and like go start writing. I'll just be practicing. Then, aha, here it comes, and then I just often from that point. In the time that we have, Joshua, I'd like for people to be able to hear, how can they learn more from you? How can they get connected with you? And what are you doing these days? What do you have to offer people who want to go deeper and learn more about this stuff?
Yeah. So I'm doing personal consulting, health consulting, and you can just go to my website, www.joshuagraner.com, JOSHUAGRANER.com. And I just launched that website, so I don't have a ton on there, but I've got information about the health coaching and consulting. And also pretty soon, within the next day or two, I'll be uploading some videos. I'll be uploading some meditations that I use with my patients. So basically my whole patient toolkit, I'll be transferring it from my patient site over to this site as well. Yeah, and I encourage anybody to reach out on Twitter and get a hold of me, or reach out on Facebook or all the other different types of social media and the interwebs to reach out. I love answering questions. For me, medicine is about community, and the more we can learn from each other, and the more that we can serve each other, I see that the healing energy of life really is love, and as we promote this, and as we offer our services and our insights, and as we open our minds and our hearts to each other, then that healing energy can flow. And then that is the chi, that is the potential. It increases our potential as humans. The more love we're generating, the more potential we have as humans in every endeavor, whether we want to stay on the planet and make it the coolest place ever, or whether we want to go someplace else in the cosmos. If our foundation is love and that healing energy is there, then there's almost nothing we can't accomplish. So, if people want to reach out to me to learn more about, how I can share my love with others, yeah, website's a great way. Yeah.
It's great. I love it. And can you be sure to put your website and any other info in the comments for this video, so anybody watching will be able to find it?
Totally. Is that under our live comments?
I don't know if you can do it through this interface, but you can go to the video on Facebook after we're done and put it there. So if you're watching live, you won't see it immediately, but it'll go up right after we get finished. So if you're catching the replay, that info should be in the comments. And as I'm sure anybody who's been watching this can tell, you're a great guy with a huge heart and a lot of knowledge and insight. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I'm glad that we're on the same team, helping to raise the consciousness of humanity and the state of love in the universe. And I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing yourself with us and our audience.
Yeah, fellas, I appreciate it. It was an honor. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And thanks, Andrew, for being here. Thanks, Joshua, for being here. And stay safe out there. Take care of yourselves and each other. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
All right.
Qigong.